according to your request. I brought the little black dog." Old Master Goo looked towards the dog cage. Glimpsed. Suddenly, it started to rain heavily. "You idiot. I asked you to buy a black dog. How did you get me a little puppy? You take a look at it. Pulling more than eating. Such a small puppy. No need to wield a sword. I really can't find it. Where are its blood vessels?" I didn't even dare to speak up. After a while, Kai, with a bitter smile, said, "You just want to hold on a bit longer. I ran all afternoon. Finally got this little black dog. Nothing else can be found. I asked you to buy a pure black, big dog. What use could such a little puppy have?" Old Master Goose stared at me. But now, there's no way to remedy this anymore. Had no choice but to put down the dog cage and say, "Okay, this little thing looks pitiful. For now, let's keep it here with me. Less melodramatic. I'll think of other ways for you." I nodded, said thank you to it. Old Master Goo's teachings. "Don't be in such a hurry to thank me, kid. The thing you have stirred up. It's not that easy to deal with. I can only teach you some basic things. As for when it becomes necessary, can it really be avoided? That will depend on your own fortune." Next, he came to open the drawer of the cabinet. He took out a few small bottles from inside, right in front of me. "Take out the contents of the bottle." I glanced over. I discovered what was inside the bottle. It's just some strange things, including a half-foot-long red-headed centipede, a scorpion the size of a fingernail, a fist-sized cicada hoe. There are many more powders that I don't know about. He took these materials, gather together, throw it into a jar, slowly grind with an iron pestle, created a lot of blended powders. It was divided into several parcels of land and given to me. I remember these powders. A face full of confusion. "Uncle, this thing, can you really reveal a ghost's true form?" Old Master Goo rolled his eyes. "Don't you dare disbelieve it. You know that I did this for you. Got these materials. How much effort did you really put in? 5 poisonous shadows. They are all creatures with heavy yin energy. After drying them, turn it into powder. Along with my specially crafted powder, it can reveal the true form of ghosts. When necessary, it can also be used to exorcise ghosts. An ordinary ghost cannot bear these powders." I swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He asked again, "What special powder did they add? Can you tell me about it?" "It's nothing much. Ashes of a cat that lived for over 10 years. Just some ghostly materials pulled straight from the grave." Old Mangu chuckled wickedly a few times. The expression grew increasingly strange. "Methods to deal with ghosts, not limited to the way of the Tao. Some strange secret methods. It can also hurt ghosts. Do you want to learn, kid?" I had a clever idea, facing the sinister gaze of the ancient master. "Quickly take 2 steps back. Shanzio Dao. Forget it then." He curled his lip. There wasn't much more discussion on this topic. "Hand me a few packets of powder. Remind me to take good care of it. It will definitely be useful when needed." Then he crossed his legs, leaning leisurely against the armchair. "Kid, I've helped you so much. You just never did. Tell me about the trouble you've gotten yourself into." This is very unfair. I was taken aback, realizing that Uncle Goo was inquiring about me. A slight hesitation in my heart. But in the end, let's start with the entire background of the matter. We're told it for him. At this point, I no longer know. Who should I really believe? I always feel that everyone who gets close to me, it seems everyone harbors some kind of intention. Lai Zu is also good. Uncle Fu is doing well too. Old Master Goo, so be it. It's all the same. In this world, there is no love without reason. Grandpa Goo has done so much for me. Most likely there are other motives. Indeed. After listening to my story, Old Master Goo smiled mysteriously, stroking his goatee. He looked at me with a strange expression and said, "I see. Emotion. You are the orphan of that accident. No wonder Jiang Yunfeng is putting in so much effort. Raised you up. His words left me stunned. Unconsciously, I widened my eyes. Big eyes. How do you know? Liao family village once experienced a landslide accident. Eh, is it difficult? Old Master Gu glanced at me. With a smirk, I reached for the cushion beneath my backside. Then he pulled out a few yellowed old newspapers. He handed it to me and said, "Years ago, Liao family village organized the villagers to mine the mountains. Ultimately led to the landslide. This is causing quite a commotion. Many newspapers have reported on this. Coincidentally, I also like reading the newspaper. I find it quite commemorative. Just hid away the old newspaper from that year. All right." I pretended to gag. Don't turn your head away. But in my heart, I secretly thought, old thing, who are you fooling? Who would deliberately hide old newspapers from over a decade ago? Old Master Gu asked me about these matters. Instead, it raised my doubts. Always feel like the tomb robbery incident from over a decade ago. It might also be related to him in some way. Otherwise, he is an old man in his 70s or 80s. It's already been a year or two. Why take the initiative to get close to me? Getting involved in troubles that don't belong to me. I have kept this in my heart all year. Said nothing. Put away those packets of powder. Fairness for Grandfather Gu. Uncle, thank you for helping me so much. If I can survive after this, I will definitely find a chance to express my gratitude to you. He nodded with a smile. He pulled out a dagger less than 3 inches long from his pocket. The dagger is shaped like a crescent moon and a star. A red gemstone is embedded in the handle. The blade shimmers coldly under the light, releasing a ghostly light like that of a cold moon. Kid, the troubles you carry. It's far from something a few packets of powder can solve. Since you've met me, I simply send the Buddha and the Tao to the West. I will send you this dagger that can slay ghosts. This thing is called the evil slaying blade. It has truly reached a critical moment. It can save your life. I hesitated, did not immediately reach out to take it, thinking quietly to myself, no blood relations, no ties. Why does he have to invest so much for me? This knife has a unique design. At first glance, it's clearly worth a lot. He gave it to me for free, just out of kindness. Old Master Goose seemed to understand my thoughts, smiled even more playfully. Shaking his head, he said, "I know, you definitely don't trust anyone right now, doubting everyone around me. Everyone has their own ulterior motives, right? I won't speak, but the flickering corner of the eye still sold out my most genuine thoughts." Old Master Gu did not care. He chuckled and said, "Indy, I have my own purpose for getting close to you. However, my true goal is not you." I placed this dagger on the table. "Think it over carefully. If you want it, just take it. If you don't want me, then just stay with me." Finished speaking. He shook his head and got up. Surprisingly, he walked with his hands behind his back, walked into the room behind the grocery store, no longer paying attention to me. I was foolish, stunned there. It's neither something to take nor to leave. It's not that I won't take it. Only 100,000 questions remained in my heart, revolving endlessly in my mind. In the end, I still gritted my teeth, grabbed that dagger, held tightly in hand. Isn't the heart just a dagger? If it's too much, then just don't use it. It's good to keep it on for self-defense. Thinking of these things, I inserted the dagger into the belt buckle, called out to Old Man Gu's room. "Thank you, sir. As long as I can live. In the future, I will definitely thank you properly." Old Master Gu did not respond to me. I don't know if I've fallen asleep. It was still intentional. Take the dagger. I return home once again. Close the door. The medicine powder we just got, scattered on the position of the Wu Gui Sha official. I remember Second Master saying, when a ghost enters the house, They would not choose to go through the front door, because of the main door of the house. It is meant for the living, with the door god to protect the home. Unbearable. The evil spirit barged in openly. So the ghost entered the house. Only through the Yang residence can one attain a position free from ghostly calamities. Since this powder has the ability to reveal ghosts, I sprinkled it on top. It is also to prevent being haunted by ghosts, silently sneaking into the room. I don't know if it's because of those powders. This night is very peaceful. I slept straight through until dawn. No more unusual encounters. Until the next morning. I rolled out of bed early in the morning, came to sit in the courtyard, waiting for Uncle Fu to appear. After a night of deep contemplation, I think I figured it out too. Even if Uncle Fu looks for me, just to borrow my hand, to achieve one's unspeakable secret, I don't need to be too pessimistic either. He can use me. Can't I turn it around and use him instead? After making up his mind, I patiently waited for several hours. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just heard the familiar knocking sound. When I opened the door and looked outside, Uncle Fu has arrived. Mistress, was yesterday okay? Strangely enough, Uncle Fu did not step directly into the courtyard, but stood outside the gate, peeking inside cautiously, saying words of concern for me, but always fixed his gaze on the place where I sprinkled the powder. Still hasn't come in. His performance. It made my heart skip a beat. I followed the ancient instructions. Sprinkle the powder on the position of the ghostly official. It is to prevent ghosts from sneaking in. Moreover, this powder is so discreet. How did he perceive it at a glance? That place has a problem. Uncle Fu, don't be a ghost. This thought scares me a little. You can look up. The sun shines brightly in the sky. The sunlight pours down. A shadow stretched out at Uncle Fu's feet. Clearly not very ghost-like. Now I can finally relax. He smiled at Uncle Fu. It's okay. Since you left, I never saw the ghost again. I didn't tell Uncle Fu about the ancient events, mainly to have a backup plan. Uncle Fu is very shrewd. It seems like something has been noticed in my eyes, but said nothing. Just smiled and said, let's go. Last time I promised to accompany you to Lai Zu's house. Now is the time. Okay, no time to waste. We are setting off soon. I have no objections. I really want to see what Uncle Fu is up to. When Yan immediately closed the door, followed Uncle Fu out of the courtyard. On the road, Uncle Fu appeared to be deep in thought. Just keep walking with your head down. Not a word spoken. He is like this. At a glance, there's something on his mind. I feigned concern and said, Uncle, why do you look so gloomy? Good. Is there? Uncle Fu shook his head, smiling awkwardly, quickly averted their gaze again, no longer paying attention to me. I can see. He must be intentionally avoiding this topic, but I don't want to miss any details. The eyes rolled around. He asked again, yesterday you went back to your hometown. What are you going to do? He looked completely bewildered, gave me a glance. Once again, with an air of mystery, the gaze was cast. Continue shaking your head. It's nothing. Just taking care of a personal matter. I let out a yell, no longer speaking. My suspicion of him grew even heavier. In the beginning, I don't have such big doubts about him yet, as time passes. But it's clear that today Uncle Fu, and the friendly demeanor as before. There are some inconsistencies. Where exactly is the inconsistency? I can't really say. It was just obvious that he was speaking less. Please ask me any questions you have. Always seems indifferent. Even stranger is. I can clearly see it in him. Caught a whiff of a peculiar earthy smell, although the scent is faint. But it can't be hidden from my nose. This explains. Yesterday he should have gone to some place to dig a hole. Moreover, it's not just an ordinary dirt pit. The earthy smell is so strong, Only those old graves that have aged. Only then is it possible to possess. I keep these doubts bottled up inside. Said nothing at all, just quietly accompanying him as we walk. The sky darkens quickly when we returned to Wutung Road. It is already evening. Standing in front of that lonely house, I feel a bit uneasy, recalling the time I infiltrated the old house, encountering the invisible person, feeling even more scared inside. I always feel that inside that room, it seems there is an eye that has been watching my every move. Fu Shu seemed quite relaxed. Arrived at the gate. First, he gave a few knocks on the door. After a while, there was no response inside. My Intui came back to tell me, it seems Lai Zu's family is not around. I nodded. That's right. The last time I came here, Aunt Kai is also not home. I don't know what this old lady does for a living. You actually came back so late. Fu Shu seemed to smile, but it wasn't a true smile. How to say it? Do you really want to see her? I can't understand her gaze. Busy shaking head, no matter what. She is always Lai Zu's biological mother. We specifically came to investigate Lai Zu's background. If I could get her help, it's all for the best. Fu Shu smiled, shaking his head with a strange expression. Didn't you meet her once before? We've talked about so many things. But the more we talked, the more confused we became. This woman is not as simple as she appears. What she says may not be trustworthy. I remained silent. Just a furtive glance at Fu Shu. Silent laughter in my heart. Aunt Kai's words are not trustworthy. Can your words really be trusted? Can't enter the front yard. I had no choice but to take a detour with Fu Shu. Then they arrived at Aunt Kai's backyard garden. Just like the last time I came, her backyard is filled with a large number of potted plants. The scenery in the courtyard is very tranquil, as if it were a small garden. There are only 2 large willow trees planted in the backyard. Jai Fan Yimao cover the entire room, because it has not been exposed to the sun for years. This made the atmosphere in the courtyard somewhat gloomy. The same question Fu Shu also noticed. Just arrived in the backyard. She rested her hand on my shoulder, prevent me from climbing over the wall. He took a deep breath, his expression serious. Don't rush to dive in just yet. There is a problem in the courtyard. I was taken aback. Ask her what questions she has. Fu Shu's expression was somber, pointed to the 2 large willow trees in the backyard, took a breath and said, there is a saying in the countryside. No mulberry trees were planted in front. Do not plant willows behind. Do not plant ghost clappers in the courtyard. Liu Mu is a shadowy wood, specifically used to raise ghosts. Moreover, the owner of this house, in addition to planting 2 large willow trees, there are still so many shade-loving plants growing in the courtyard. It is clearly not a coincidence. Although I have followed Second Master for many years, can explain these yin-yang theories. Not fully grasped yet. So he tilted his head and asked back, what is Yinmu? Fu Shu took a deep breath. He looked at the backyard with a wary expression, then pulled me aside, patiently explained. In Wanwu Street, there is a saying about yin and yang. Even plants cannot escape the norm. For example, the commonly seen peach wood, chestnut trees and cypress trees, etc. These plants grow towards the sun. The better the lighting conditions, the faster they grow. So it is called Yangwu. Even ghosts find it difficult to approach these trees. But some plants, instead they went against the grain, don't like cold and damp environments either. For example, the willow tree in Kai Sheng's backyard, and the vegetation and potted plants that covered the entire backyard. You might not have noticed. The house of this family, it is not oriented north-south, but rather facing east to west, on the shady side of this street. I rarely see the sun, a residence for the living. It's impossible to choose such a Feng Shui layout. Living in this environment for a long time, no matter how strong a person is, It is also inevitable to get sick. That said, Fu Shu suddenly paused. A strange and inexplicable expression appeared. The tone was mixed with an indescribable sense of fear. Unless this house is specifically designed to house ghosts, I am now suspicious. This Kai Sheng is also not a human. What? I suddenly started shaking again, trembling along the path. Don't scare me like that. Lai Zu's mother. Clearly, it's just a living person. I even sat with her and chatted. How is she a ghost? I didn't say she was a ghost. Just say it. She may no longer be alive. It's not a ghost. They are not even alive. What could that be? I'm completely confused. Written in the eyes are 100,000 questions. Seeing me like this, Fu Shu sighed again. In this world, there are still many things you don't understand. For example, the living dead. After their death, the 3 souls and 7 spirits will not leave the body immediately, but continue to be stored within the body. Let this body continue to live as if you are alive. But people like this, there is no more time left. There cannot be any yang energy in the body. Anyone who spends too much time with the living dead, you will definitely be infected by the negative energy surrounding them, even soaked with moisture. Giant Fu's words are becoming increasingly terrifying. I can't help but sweat anymore. Then Shan Shan smiled. Shaking his head, he said, "Don't scare me. What evidence do you have to say that Kai Sheng is not human? Isn't the evidence right on you?" Fu Shu shot me a glare, a half smile, half serious expression. Let me lift my arm. I was completely puzzled, but still I instinctively did as told. Then Fu Shu reached out his hand. He rolled up my sleeve, pointing below my elbow. A few blue spots appeared, but I don't know when. Chen Shen Dao, you can see for yourself. What is this? I straightened myself, looking down at my elbow. The strange dark blue-black patterns at night. Suddenly startled. Suddenly, a white piece was placed on the board. How did I get this bruise on me? This is not a bruise. It is a wet spot. Fu Shu widened his eyes. A single sentence scared me to death. You have once interacted with this living dead, still living under the same roof with him. We've been chatting for so long, long before I realized it, caught in his dampness. This is what led to the arm. The unique spots of the deceased appeared. But I was so scared my eyes bulged. Instinctively want to jump up. Fu Shu pressed down on my shoulder. Fei Qi Dao. Don't be nervous. It's just a bit lacking in vitality. After all, you are a living person. The bloodline has always been flowing smoothly. It won't be long. These wet spots will disappear on their own. Just stay away from that old woman. I asked with a sweat-drenched brow. Why take away my vitality? Fu Shu looked helpless, sighed and said, You still don't understand. The living dead have no yang energy. As time goes by, inevitably leads to the decay of the body. I can only take yang energy from others to ensure the body does not decay. All right, saying this is pointless. Hurry up and go inside. Finished speaking. Fu Shu refused to waste any more words with me, pointing towards the small courtyard immersed in a strange atmosphere. Pat my shoulder. Signal me that I can act now. I was foolish. Why don't you go in with me? Fu Shu said with a cold expression. This courtyard is the layout of a grave. A living person entered the haunted house. The spirit of the horse is diminished by a third. It might leave some scent behind. In the end, they were haunted by evil spirits. I cannot enter this place. I can only wait outside to meet you. I was amused by what he said. You say you don't dare to go in. Why should I be allowed in? Fu Shu said earnestly. You and I are not the same, including this time. You have already gone in 3 times. Too many lions, no need to raise them. Why bother meeting again and again? All right. It has come to this. I have long become numb as well. Let it be death, at least before I die. I need to figure this out. What are these for, after all? Encouraged by Feng Shui, I finally mustered the courage, carefully climbed over the fence post. It might be a psychological effect. Just entered the backyard. I immediately felt a chilling gust of wind, crawling up the pant leg. My leg hairs stood on end from the cold. They all stood up, relying on the memories from last time. I quickly snuck into the back kitchen. As the door opened, once again I caught a faint smell of blood, feeling very uneasy. I don't understand. Kai Shen's back kitchen. Why does such a strong smell of blood linger? This further confirmed Feng Shui's judgment. This house, it was never meant for the living to inhabit, although it wasn't the first time sneaking into his house. But I still feel nervous inside, scared to death, crouching cautiously in the back kitchen. He looked around the room. After confirming that no one was around, this is when he slowly stood up. Steeling himself, he continued walking towards the stairs. Last time I went to the second floor, I have already confirmed where Lai Zu's room is. It was just interrupted by an invisible ghost. This time, I have done enough preparation. One hand grasped the medicine powder that Grandpa Gu gave me. The other hand tightly gripped the slashing knife. Zin said, "Come on. As long as you dare to show up, I will leave you nowhere to hide." Old wooden stairs, the crunching sound underfoot. I walk very slowly. 2 full minutes later, just gathered the courage. I groped my way to the front of that pink room, facing that eerie big door. I took a deep breath. I'm clearly nervous to death inside, but still mustered the courage. Let out a low growl. "I'm not afraid of you anymore. If you have the ability, come out." This time, there was no sound coming from behind the door. Everything is very calm. It seems that the ghost is not here. Still talking. It's because of the saber in my hand. I've already scared him away. No matter the reason. Can avoid direct contact with ghosts. After all, it can be considered a good thing. I let out a breath, wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. He cautiously reached out his hand, gently turned the doorknob. When pushing the door open, I am extremely nervous, afraid that once this door opens, a ghostly face will suddenly pop out behind you. It's good that worrying is unnecessary. The room is very quiet. There are no abnormalities, just because of the weather. It makes the room very dark. Everything seems a bit hazy. I reached my hand out to the wall, fumbling for the light switch. Long shots several times. Finally found the button. Then, gathering courage, pressed down hard. With a sudden sound, the lights come on. The moment the room shifts from darkness to light, I saw a strange 8 immortals table, quietly placed in the middle of the bedroom. Strange. Why is there a table here? I was stunned again, looking around this small room of about 10 square meters. The furnishings inside are very simple. There is no bed. There is no wardrobe either, except for an 8 immortals table placed in the center of the room. There is only one bamboo platform left, and a small black wooden box placed behind the bamboo altar. The small wooden box sat quietly on the 8 immortals table. The distance between us is very close. The gaze passed through the bamboo platform. I discovered the surface of the wooden box, unexpectedly wrapped in a strange red thread. The thread was damp, as if just soaked in fresh blood. It looks extremely strange. I stared at the wooden box, staring blankly for a long time. It feels like this square and upright little box. It looks like a smaller version of an urn. The more I think about it, the creepier it feels. I have no choice but to summon all my courage. Arriving in front of the wooden box, remove the outer circle of red thread. With trembling hands, gently open it. The moment the box was opened, I was completely stunned. At the depths of this box that is only 30 centimeters long, a scarecrow figure suddenly appeared. The little person had their features drawn with a red pen. Seems vivid and lifelike. At first glance, makes me feel particularly familiar. Next, on the limbs of the scarecrow, tied tightly with red threads, curved line end. Looks like an earthworm, thickly covered on top. Just a glance. Just felt incredibly eerie. Ah, what the hell is this? I was startled, my heart skipped a beat. Instinctively dropped the box. I took several steps back. The box landed on the table with a thud. The scarecrow inside jumped up from the inertia. Translate it directly. Rolled off the edge of the table. I keep a close eye and look again, discovering on the back of that scarecrow, she unexpectedly posted a yellow paper. A line of small characters was written above with a brush. Due to the long distance, I can't see it very clearly. I had no choice but to keep pushing forward. Gently leaned in. Just this glance. My heart almost stopped from the fright. Isn't this my own birth chart? The scarecrow has my birth date stuck to its back. No wonder when I looked at his face. The more you look, the more familiar it seems. Who did this? He used my birth date and time to create this figurine. Is it to curse me? My scalp instantly felt like it flew away. I instinctively wanted to destroy that box. Just at that moment, a whistle suddenly sounded from outside the house. I was taken aback. I realized that Uncle Fu was signaling me to retreat. When I came before, I have discussed it with Uncle Fu. I went into the room to search for clues. He is on lookout outside. Once danger occurs, immediately use the whistle to signal my retreat. Hearing this whistle, I immediately turned my head towards the bedroom windowsill. Indeed, a thin figure was seen from afar, holding a black plastic bag, walking towards this house with determination. And the footsteps are quick. It's Kai Shen. How does he always return so promptly every time? Looking at the rapidly returning Kai Shen, I felt an inexplicable flutter in my heart. Suddenly, nothing else mattered. Hastily turned around, ran down the stairs. While Kai Shen hasn't noticed me yet, I crossed the backyard at the fastest speed. Hurriedly ran to the place previously agreed upon with Uncle Fu. Just stopped to catch my breath. A person holding a cigarette emerged from the darkness. It was Uncle Fu who had been waiting outside. Xiao Fan, how did you come out so fast? I saw the sparrow return. Uncle Fu appeared very surprised. Instead, they asked me how I got out so quickly. I was taken aback. Lima said, "Didn't you tell me to hurry and leave? I just heard your whistle." Uncle Fu looks even stranger now. Open your mouth wide. A direct press. Then he shook his head in denial. I didn't whistle. Since you went in. I just kept squatting in this place. Never left at all. What? Uncle Fu's words gave me a strange feeling. My heart is beating faster. That whistle just now. It turns out it wasn't Uncle Fu who sent it. Then who could it be? I turned back, looking at the dark building under the night sky. My mind has become confused again. Before, I made a last-minute arrangement with Uncle Fu. A good whistle sound. Once he discovers the danger, blow the whistle immediately. Let me escape. This verbal agreement, only Uncle Fu and I know. But the problem is, Uncle Fu didn't notice Kai Sheng at all. There wasn't even a whistle to remind me to come downstairs. But that voice just happened to catch Kai Sheng on his way home. Thinking of this, I felt even more uneasy, looking around frantically, always doubting what's behind me. It seems like there are extra pair of eyes. Uncle Fu is still in the dark. I have no idea what happened. Seeing me so nervous, just shook my shoulder. Asked me what's wrong. I have a dark expression. Mentioned Kai Sheng's sudden return home. Uncle Fu immediately trembled. After realizing it, the expression turned extremely unpleasant. Without further ado, directly grabbed my arm, turned around and walked back the way I came. Walked a long way. He said in a deep voice, "You just turned over." Brush in. Kai Shen who went home. This can't be a coincidence. I feel confused too. Zinshu said, "Yes." The same experience. It has already happened twice. It was the same last time. I just infiltrated Kai Province's house. She appeared shortly after, every time the interval between us, all within 5 to 6 minutes. It's said to be a coincidence. What a coincidence! Uncle Fu continued with a serious expression. The only explanation is, this old woman is at home. Set up a certain formation. Once outsiders intrude, she can sense it immediately. That's why I rushed over to stop it. Fortunately, you escaped quickly. Otherwise, it will fall into the hands of this living dead. Your turn. It would be worse than death. My heart races inexplicably. Zhen shuo kan behai zhen shijie. At the beginning, I always feel that Kai Sheng is a pitiful man who has lost his daughter. But now that I think about it, what if she's just a poor, lonely old woman? How could it be at home, setting on such a sinister burial grounds Feng Shui? They even kept a ghost in the house. All signs indicate Kai Sheng is quite impressive. Just then it appeared just in time, the whistle urging me to escape quickly. How did it come about again? I looked at Uncle Fu. He had a serious expression on his face. It doesn't look like they are lying at all. More and more certain in my heart. By my side, surely there's also an invisible person following, monitoring my every move. This thought filled me with immense dread. Uncle Fu saw that it was safe, turned his head to look at me, and said, "How is it? You stayed at Kai Sheng's house for a few minutes. Is there really any discovery?" I instantly thought of that. The mysterious wooden box. Immediately into the box. The scarecrow that bears my birth chart. But strangely enough, I did not tell Uncle Fu the truth, but shook his head. No, time is too tight. I didn't even have the chance to go upstairs and take a good look. The whistle sounded. He let out a howl. It seems a bit disappointing, but soon shook his head and said, "Tonight is not the right time. We can only think of other ways." Investigated Lai Zu's background. "It's getting late. You should hurry back and rest. I'll come find you once I think of a good plan." Finished speaking, he turned and walked towards another street. It seems like something suddenly came to mind, suddenly turned back. Look at me and speak. You need to be especially careful of the people around you. The guy whistling to remind you to leave. I'm afraid I may not have good intentions towards you. In short, what happened to you is very strange. Except for me, don't trust anyone. Aha, I will. I nodded vigorously, watching the hurried departure of the defeated figure. Yet a cold laugh rose from within. Just make it up. I don't trust anyone now. The investigation has made no progress. I can only turn around with my head down. Returned home once again. The events of this day. It's making me dizzy. I just want to lie on the bed and sleep. Never wake up again. But when I opened the door to my home, just as I was about to step into the yard, Yu Guang caught a glimpse of a detail. But once again, it made my steps freeze for a moment. The whole person froze at the door. Completely realized. Just saw last night, at the corner of the wall where I sprinkled the powder, there were unexpectedly a row of black footprints. The footprints extend a long distance. It extended from the corner of the wall to the grape trellis, the rocking chair that was originally placed under the grape trellis. As I pushed the door open, creaking and swaying sound. It seems like there's an invisible person, gently rocking in the rocking chair. Another ghost has entered. Looking at the confidently swaying rocking chair, my hair stood on end. Instinctively reached for the Zhan Zai Dao at my waist, just as the palm grasped the knife handle. The rocking chair finally came to a stop. It seems like the person lying on top. I have already seen through my actions. My fingers are almost going numb. Stood there dumbly for a long time. Suddenly, a thought struck me. "Grandfather, are you back? If I remember correctly, tonight should be the 7th night for second master. The old often say, although the soul leaves the body after death, but it won't immediately enter the underworld. There will still be 7 days left in the sun room. It is to fulfill the unfinished wishes from life. Second uncle raised me for over 10 years. after he collapsed violently. The only unfulfilled wish. Perhaps it's just me. Will it? The ghost leaning against the lounge chair. Its second master. Thinking of this, I'm not afraid anymore. Slowly release the grip on the knife handle, leaning a little towards the recliner. The lounge chair remained still for a long time, until I quietly walked up to the lounge chair. As I slowly crouched down, a creak suddenly came from the chair. It was as if the invisible person stood up. Then a very clear footprint appeared on the ground again. The tip of the toes clearly pointed at me, only 2 feet apart from me. I can't quite describe what that feeling is. So eerie. I feel a sense of familiarity again. I stare at that ghost for a long time. He swallowed hard. Are you really the second master? What needs to be said? Just give me some hints, okay? I don't understand what this means. At the moment of hesitation. But I found that the footprints had already passed me by, moving towards the gate of the courtyard. Where are you going? I guessed, instinctively shouted at the footprints. But the footprints did not stop, still maintaining that outward-reaching posture, gradually walking towards the street outside. I just realized this. This ghost. They must be planning to take me somewhere. Where are we going? I hesitated again. I see I haven't caught up. The footprints suddenly stopped. It seems to be waiting for me in place. Don't rush. Just maintaining that appearance of going around in circles. I hesitated repeatedly. In the end, I couldn't hold back the questions in my mind. Gritting his teeth, let it die if it must. I want to see. What does he really want to do? I followed the trail of footprints directly, stepped out the door together with him. The lights on the street are dim, but the footprints are very clear, always maintaining the posture of walking south. And the faster they walked, I gradually fell behind that trail of footprints. The footprints are getting further away from me, anxious in my heart. Then he immediately started running while shouting. Where exactly are you taking me? Can you stop for a moment? He didn't listen to me. At first, it was just a hurried walk forward. Let's walk on. The speed kept increasing. Even if I give it my all, there's no way to keep up completely. Finally, after returning to a barren slope on the outskirts of the city, the footprints have vanished into the night. Rely on. What does this even mean? Deliberately lured me out. Still unwilling to talk to me. I'm exhausted. Stop at the place where the footprints disappear. Breathing heavily, couldn't help but curse. But soon, I was stunned again. Isn't this loying slow? After the second master died, it will be buried nearby, where the footprints disappear, at the grave of second master, not even 500 meters. Could it really be the second master's divine intervention, deliberately using that trail of footprints? Lead me to the grave. I have something to say. A thought suddenly emerged in my mind. But soon, again, I shook my head in denial. At first, I also had my doubts. This set of footprints comes from second master. As time goes by, I denied this conjecture, although eerie is elderly, but the stature is relatively tall. Plus, having lived in the mountains for years, helping someone choose a burial site. The footprints are very large, but those footprints just now. But seems relatively small. It feels more like something left behind by a girl. Could it be Lai Zhu? I am even more confused. Let's not talk about whether Lai Zhu is a ghost or not. Even if she is a ghost, why do you want to put me through this? Bring it to the grave of second master. With suspicion, I ultimately decided, gritting one's teeth, let's go take a look at Yi's grave. This outing was rather sudden. I didn't bring it. Offerings of incense and paper money for the second master, after arriving at the grave. So I found a spot to sit down, take out the cigarettes from the pack. After being lit with a lighter, gently placed in front of the second master's grave. Grandfather, I can only blame myself for not having the ability. I can't give you a grand funeral. If you have any dissatisfaction, sir. You can send me a dream directly, but please don't mess with it. These demons are coming out to scare me. Sure, for more than a decade, I spend every day with second uncle. Nature is not afraid. After lighting a cigarette, I knelt before the gravestone, facing second master. Then bad bows. But when I finished bowing my head, when preparing to get up, strange things happened. Just listen beneath the grave mound, in the coffin covered by the soil. Suddenly, there were dull banging sounds. It's like someone is knocking on the coffin lid from inside. I'm clever. Every hair stood on end. Uncontrollably, I climbed up, took a few steps backward. I feel so stifled hiding in here. Don't rush. Wait for me. I feel too cramped hiding in here. I'll get you out soon. I'll take you to a better place. Second master summoned me this way. There must be some kind of purpose. I just don't know the reason behind it, preventing him from appearing to tell me. I can only rely on my own guesses. Judgment made. Perhaps the size of that coffin was not suitable. Eerie felt frustrated. I ran home as fast as I could, find a hoe in the courtyard, run back towards the grave of second master. The grave is several miles away from my home. Back and forth. It's already taken up most of the night, until 3 or 4 in the morning. I just arrived at second master's grave. Reinsert the incense. Kneeling on the ground, bowing while speaking. Grandfather, I'm about to dig your grave. Please give me a clear answer. Should I take you out or not? As soon as the words fell, a cold wind rose from the grave. The flames on the incense flickered restlessly. Even the yellow paper I scattered on the ground is flying up. All fell behind the grave mound. Looking at the joss paper drifting behind the grave, I was taken aback. Instinctively felt this might be a hint from second master. Immediately picked up the hoe and walked over, carefully circled around to the back of the grave. Following the cold moonlight, I looked down, instantly dumbfounded. The grave of second master has just been finished not long ago. It should be very secure in theory, but I don't know why. A figure suddenly appeared behind the grave, the hole made by a fist. There are still traces left by someone digging here. From outside the tomb, it extended deep into the tomb. Rely. Which bastard did this? I was instantly furious. I squatted down to check everything, realizing before I came over, the grave of second master has already been disturbed. No wonder second master would give me such a hint. Which bastard is it? Disturbed his grave. My heart ached so much. Wiped away the tears and stood up, choked with emotion. Bien. Am I really useless? I have always made you angry before. Now you are dead. I can't even take care of your grave. Cried for a while. I began to walk along the collapsed opening, swing the hoe downwards. This tomb was chosen by second master during his lifetime, but it cannot be considered a Feng Shui treasure spot. In the words of second master himself, he has no offspring. I have not accumulated any great merits. Unable to enjoy a fine tomb, as long as there is a place to rest after death, it is already sufficient. The veins of this tomb are not long. The ground is not raised either. There is no obvious conclusion. The grave mounds rise high and fall low towards the shore. It's just an ordinary Feng Shui spot. Anyway, the energy of this grave mound. It has already been removed by that hole. I plan to exhume second uncle's remains. Choose another burial site. Give him a proper burial. Newly built grave mound. The soil is still very moist. I dug down for a little while. Then it bumped into the coffin. Immediately changed location and dug down. It took a full 2 to 3 hours. They barely managed to dig out the coffin when I saw the coffin completely exposed. Suddenly, I was infuriated again. I don't know which heartless person, surprisingly on second master's coffin, pressed a few peach wood nails. They even drew a few talismans at the end of the coffin. The winding and twisting talisman almost covered half of the coffin, although I can't see the intricacies inside. But it can be guessed. The person who does this. It is planned to let second master die. It was not peaceful either. Bastard. I was so angry that I kept cursing. Squatting by the coffin, I wiped away a tear. At the same time, doubts lingered in my heart. It's even deeper than before. When we buried second uncle, I specifically checked this coffin. At that time, I didn't notice any problems. This indicates the coffin of second master. Is there a hint of earthiness? Will it? Thinking about this possibility, I suddenly, her eyes bulged out. Non non dal. This coffin, it was personally crafted by Uncle Fu. When we buried second master back then, he also personally helped manage it. Why do we have to find a way afterward? Dig up this grave. The more I think, the more confused I become. Steadying myself, looking back at that coffin, he took a deep breath, decided to open the coffin lid to take a look. According to the local old customs, after a person dies, they find peace in the ground. If the official were to be relocated for burial, we must choose an auspicious day. First, hold a ritual. Only the Empress Dowager can open the coffin. Otherwise, it would be a great disrespect to the ancestors' remains. But I don't have time to think about so much now. Second master cared for me so much while he was alive. Even if this unfilial son has offended him, he shouldn't blame me either, right? I continued to bow in front of the coffin, bumped my head, and it feels like my brain is swelling. Just wiped his nose and stood up. So heart-wrenching. Grandfather, it is my unfilial behavior. To uncover the truth, I can only offend you. Ming is watching over us from the heavens. Please forgive me. Finished speaking. I grit my teeth, determined in my heart. Directly insert the hoe into the crack beneath the coffin lid. Pried open, the cracked coffin lid. It looks like a shark with a wide open mouth. A foul, cold wind. It just came pouring out like that. The stillness sprayed me in the face. I was struck by the cold wind. Suddenly, I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. Dizzy and lightheaded, almost unable to stand steady. I have to brace my hands on the coffin. Strive to open your eyes wide. I took a glance at the body beneath the coffin, and I just found out. This coffin is actually empty. The body inside has long since vanished. Where did the second master's body go? My whole forehead feels like it's exploding. My head also fell into dizziness. The body relaxed. He slipped directly down beside the coffin. I don't understand what's happening to me. Just feeling a bit dazed. I feel particularly weak. Unconsciously, I closed my eyes, fell into a deep sleep, before completely losing consciousness. Faintly, I also heard a girl. Laughter like silver bells rang out. I am really too tired. Before long, just completely close your eyes. This time, the coma is very deep. I don't know how much longer it has been. My confused mind gradually gained consciousness. After waking up, I feel very thirsty. It's unbearable with the smoke and heat. A powerless groan. Water? Hey, you little rascal, you still know to fetch water to drink. Soon by my ear. Then came an old, cold laugh. After a while, then there was a stream of clear water, poured down the throat. I instinctively swallowed twice, but was choked and coughed repeatedly, hastily opened my eyes. I pushed away the person who was feeding me water, sat up again in confusion, and out. Where am I? Of course. It's at my house. A familiar cold snort echoed in my ears. I shivered all over. Once again, raise your head. Then I saw a blank face. Jiang Ling Lang stood coldly at the foot of the bed, holding a large porcelain bowl filled with clear water. Old Master Gu, how did I end up at your house? I was stunned, hastily got up from the bedside, yet still feeling dizzy in the head. I had no choice but to kneel with my hands supporting the headboard, lowered my head for a long time. Old Master Gu smiled a smile that wasn't really a smile and said, how dare you ask me? This morning, I took Ziohei out for a walk in the countryside. Suddenly, I saw you lying in the grass. That's why I hurried to bring you back," old Master Goose said, while rubbing his old arms and legs, glaring at me with puffed cheeks. "You should consider how heavy you are. I am just an old man. You walked several miles while lying down. I'm completely exhausted." I was taken aback. I quickly recalled in my mind the incident of digging up second uncle's grave last night. He gave a clever blow, immediately dashed out the door. Old Master Goose stood coldly behind me and said, "Don't run away. I looked after you." A set of women's clothes emerged from the coffin. "There is nothing." Suddenly, I quickly stopped my footsteps, looking back in confusion, looking at Grandpa Goo. You saw it too." "Nonsense. The place where you fell is not far from that coffin." "I'm not blind." "Of course I can see it." Old Man Goo walked over coldly. A hand pressed down on my shoulder. He forcefully pulled me back until I sit down again. He sighed and said, "Kid, tell me honestly, in the middle of the night, why are you carrying a hoe to dig a grave? Since the last breakup, what exactly have you encountered?" My eyes are blank, looking at the solemn face of Old Man Goo, moved the corners of his mouth, but didn't say anything. "I don't want to talk." Old Master Goo doesn't urge, just a glance, revealing a dry, cold smile. "If you don't say it, I won't force you either. But you, kid, are about to face big trouble, truly unwilling to speak the truth. Just pick a wider goal for yourself earlier." His words shocked me again. Mang raised his head and said, What's wrong? What's wrong? You little brat lost a broken thing. Do you know?" Old Master Goose stared at me. Her expression was gloomy. "Since I carried you back, I just found out. You've been sleeping all this time. No matter how you call, you can't wake them up. Until I did the check for you. This is when I realized. Your 3 souls and 7 spirits are already incomplete." "What?" I started shaking all over, instinctively covering my chest with my hand. Before they could even speak, I saw Old Man Goose shaking his head. Sighing, he told me, "A person has 3 souls and 7 spirits. The 3 souls refer to the heavenly soul, earth soul, and life soul, mastering a person's spirit and vitality. The 7 spirits, it relates to a person's memory, emotion, and charm, divide into lion dogs, corrosion, sparrow hawk, swallowing thieves. They do remove filth and stench. The broken thing you lost is called a sparrow hawk. Fortunately, it was discovered early. I forcefully brought him back using secret magic. Otherwise, you might end up sleeping deeply and not waking up. Even if I wake up, the second half of life will also become foolish and dazed, like a fool." "Bess, how is that possible?" I stood up instinctively, staring blankly at my own hands. It seems they can see my misfortune. Old Master Goose smiled wickedly. He pulled out another cigarette, handed to me. They said, "Kid, you don't believe me, do you? If you don't believe me, just give it a try. Can I still light this cigarette? Just a cigarette. How is it possible that it won't catch fire? I can't accept what Grandpa Goo is saying." Result smoke. I instinctively took out my lighter and lit it. Strangely enough, no matter how I press the lighter, no one can ignite it. Shot several times in a row. I was so angry that I shouted curses. "Rely, this lighter is broken." "Who says it's bad?" Old Master Goose seemed to smile yet not smile. Casually took my lighter. "Gently press with your fingertip." A sudden sound. The flames immediately surged up, almost burned my eyebrows. This, I held that cigarette. Completely foolish. Why can't the lighter light in my hand? Once it got into Old Master Goo's hands, he was immediately ignited. Seeing me lost in thought, Old Master Goo laughed strangely a couple of times. "Very simple. Because I have a lot of positive energy in me. But you, kid on you. Yet there is not much vitality left, missing that piece. You are no longer whole. In the long run, the yang energy in the body will diminish increasingly faster. Sooner or later, you'll become a living dead, like a zombie. I won't speak anymore. Just the corners of the mouth trembling incessantly. Long sold out the tension in my heart. The cigarette fell from the corner of his mouth. All right. Kid, you need to think carefully. Now, besides me, I'm afraid no one can help you anymore. Should you tell me the truth or not? It's up to you to decide. Old Master Goose slowly got up. Someone patted me on the shoulder. Then they had to go outside to work. If you don't want to talk, then hurry home to prepare for the aftermath. You won't need to come looking for me anymore. Don't. Uncle, I said, I will say everything. I was terrified. Jumped up like a conditioned reflex, tightly gripping Grandpa Gu's arm, let out a bitter laugh. Then he shared all the strange experiences he had gone through. I narrated everything in detail to old Master Gu. Before, I have always had my reservations about old Master Gu, mainly unable to discern his origins and background. I always feel like he is intentionally getting close to me. What do you want to get from me? But now, I had to place my hopes on him, unable to resist the instinct to survive. Everything was explained to him regarding the cause and effect. Listen to my story. Old Master Gu fell silent. Maintain that numb face. What trouble have I gotten into now? I looked completely puzzled, staring blankly at Old Man Gu, feeling extremely frustrated inside. Why does everyone say I cause trouble? Second Master said so. Old Master Gu said the same, besides kindly helping Lai Zukian with her grave once. What the hell did I do wrong? You were wrong because last night, the things in that coffin shouldn't be brought out again. Old Master Gu turned around and glared at me. The eyeballs are bulging. The tone had sunk to the lowest point. That thing, it was your second uncle who fought desperately, at the cost of sacrificing oneself. Just locked it back in the coffin. But you have been deceived by the malevolent spirit. Once again, we pried open your second uncle's coffin, causing his efforts to go to waste. Also implicating oneself. Also lost a piece. But my whole body froze. Suddenly stood up and said, "This is impossible. You are lying to me." In the coffin of Second Master. How is it possible to trap a ghost? Then he himself, half a story. I stopped again, suddenly realized something in my heart. Her expression changed in an instant, completely turned white. Recalling that day, Second Master took me to Yamwang Gully. Experience of reclaiming lost lifespan. I suddenly felt a wave of suffocation, even though I passed out at that time. Did not witness the whole city until I woke up. Only then did I discover Second Master's body. But at least we can be sure, for he paid for it with his own life. Barely managed to save myself. Afterward, I brought Second Uncle's body home, just as they were about to make the coffin for him. However, it was discovered that Second Master I have already prepared my coffin in advance. Strangely enough, he equipped the coffin for himself, regardless of size or proportion. None of them suit my build. This indicates that coffin, it wasn't meant for Second Master to use at all. Could it be? Second Master had long anticipated that thing would emerge. That's why I prepared a new coffin, prepared to seal it in again. Thinking of these, I was completely stunned. Incredibly looked at Uncle Gu. Old Master Gu smiled darkly. Pat the back of my head with your hand. Kid, can think of this layer. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. You're not so hopelessly foolish yet. I have seen that coffin, the structure of the coffin, combining the Feng Shui landscape of Loyang Slope. It's simply a deadlock used to secure the relationship. The day of the duel, your second uncle should use his own body. Afterwards, borrowing your hand again, put yourself and that fierce ghost locked together in a coffin, reburied in the Feng Shui formation set up in Loyang's slope in advance. In other words, as long as that Feng Shui formation is intact, the vengeful spirits will never have their day in the sun again. He calculated everything thoroughly, but didn't expect, you little brat will be easily swayed by others. I personally chiseled open that coffin. In the end, everything he painstakingly built was destroyed. At this point in the story, in the eyes of ancient times, a hint of inexplicable mockery flickered, although not explicitly stated. But clearly mocking my foolishness, I can't speak anymore, pressing my hand against my heart. Just feel a tightness in my breath. The whole person stood there like a piece of wood. But soon I thought of another detail. Shook his head quickly. What about second master himself? When he was buried back then, I personally placed his corpse into the coffin. Why do I wait until I knock on the coffin? But his body could not be seen. Old Master Gu furrowed his brows, gently stroking the goat's beard. Chanian said, I can't figure this out either. Or perhaps, isn't it true that your second uncle has other plans and arrangements? Finished speaking, Old Master Gu looked at me with a strange expression and said, Liao Fan, have you ever thought about it? Actually, your second uncle has many secrets hidden within him. Perhaps he never died at all. Impossible. Before Old Master Gu finished speaking, I suddenly stood up. Shake your head vigorously. His corpse. I carried it back myself. The coffin is placed at home for 3 days again. Already dead beyond resurrection. Yee you, still too inexperienced. Old Master Gu laughed again. He shook his head mysteriously and asked me, Then let me ask you, 3 days of mourning. Can you guarantee that you haven't left for even a moment? After the body was placed in the coffin, you won't be able to see him again. How do you know? He won't open his eyes in the coffin. Look for a chance to leave. I am at a loss for words. Suddenly fell silent. While setting up the altar for second master, I had to deal with those who came to pay their respects. I have left several times before, during the night vigil. Yet I can't help but feel sleepy all the time. He also went to the bathroom several times. I've eaten quite a lot. The funeral lasted for 3 whole days. I'm the only one managing the household. It's impossible to guard second master's coffin at all times. Will he fake his death while I was away? It's a clever trick to switch the pillars. But I still can't understand. Staring blankly at Grandpa Gu. Why does second master hit like this? Perhaps he is taking advantage of the opportunity of faking his own death. Old man Gu shook his head. The tone is not very certain either. The one who knows the secret of that coffin. It's not just your second uncle. The people who deceived you at that time. Clearly, it was also to get the things inside the coffin. But in the end, they failed. Only your second uncle succeeded. Perhaps, at this moment, he, carrying the secret in the coffin for a long time, escaped swiftly. Leave it to you to set up this maze. It's just to delay others who covet the coffin. I won't say a word. As soon as the vision opened, thinking bitterly in my heart, Ernie, how could you do this to me? All right, these baseless matters. We don't need to continue discussing it. Old Uncle Goose sensed my emotions. Akov, you again. I was momentarily stunned. Hastily said. Old Master Goose shook his head, turned around and opened a drawer box. Then from that box, a set of red satin wedding attire was taken out. The bright red wedding robe. It appears particularly dazzling under the lights. At the chest of the ceremonial robe, there is also a pair of delicate mandarin ducks tattooed. I really want to talk about society. When a woman gets married, the style worn on the body. Old Master Gu's expression was strange. He looked at me sideways and said, This wedding robe, it's what was left for you in the coffin. He must be interested in you. What? I shook my hands. Almost ruined this big red wedding robe. fell to the ground. Old Master Gu hurriedly stopped me. Don't lose it. If you lose this wedding robe, it means you rejected it. What if he becomes angry out of shame? Take action against you first. I might not even be able to protect you. Uncle, why is this happening? I'm completely confused. My mind is in a mess. A group of Jianghu, desperately pounding his own head. He snatched away my soul. I will keep this wedding robe. Do you want to become my partner? But why would he take an interest in me? The matters between these men and women. How would I know? Old Master Gu rolled his eyes, and then pressed my hand again. First, let's put this away. When necessary, it might just become a lifesaver. Additionally, if you don't want to be captured easily, it must be done before forming the ghostly bond. Investigate the background and consequences of this matter. My heart is suffering more than ever, shaking head in confusion. How to check? I have tried several times. Every investigation encounters unexpected events. Until now, I don't know anything. Old Master Goose smiled, confidently pointed at himself. Said the young man, that's because during your previous investigation, you've never called me. The situation is different now. I'm very curious about you. I've decided to help you one more time. As long as you take me with you, we will definitely be able to uncover some clues. I am at a loss for words, looking at Old Man Goo's mysteriously wrinkled face. But in my heart, I was thinking, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. This old man is scheming to meddle in my affairs. What purpose do they have in mind? But things have developed to this point. I have no choice at all. Just sighed and nodded. Ask him how he decides to continue the investigation. Elder Gu didn't say a word, but instead tugging at his beard. After much deliberation, this is when it was mentioned. It all started because of a girl named Lai Zhu. Since we need to investigate, we need to start from her. I said, but Lai Zhu has already gone missing. The more dangerous the place, the more likely it is to hide secrets. No time to waste. When you've rested enough, let's set off right away. Regarding this trip, Old Master Gu appeared full of confidence. I am a bit indecisive. This old man has an unknown background. So divine again. What if it's the same as the art of kimono? What should I do if you have ulterior motives towards me? Moreover, many people have their eyes on the secret of that coffin. No one can say for sure. Is Gu Dai one of them? One can reflect deeply on pain. I still decided to accompany him on this journey again, for no other reason, even if it means death. I can't die without a clear reason. The next morning, I packed everything up, riding back to Wutong Street with Old Man Gu. This is already my fourth time coming to this place. Every time I come here, the experiences we go through will all be different. The departure time this time is very early. When we arrived at Wutong Street, it's just time for a meal. I was pondering, should we sneak Grandpa Gu into the backyard? The old man reached out to stop me. He looked oddly towards the courtyard. He sniffed a few more times with effort. It seems I caught a whiff of something. About 10 seconds later, Old Master Gu pulled me to a secluded spot by the street, said with a cold face, "This place is strange. There is not only a sense of humidity, it was still shrouded in a thick aura of darkness. This dish god should have a doorman at home, used to monitor this residence for oneself. Anyone who comes uninvited, he would immediately sense it. I still admire Mr. Gu's abilities very much." Blind Spot nodded. "The old soldiers are truly impressive." "That's right. I noticed it the last time I came too. The culinary god is quite remarkable. It could be a living dead." Little did they know after hearing my words. Old Master Gu was taken aback, turned to look at me. Slightly smiling, he said, "What if he really is a living dead?" Things became easier instead. "I see Grandpa Gu. Ask him why." Old Master Gu smiled. He asked me back, "A living dead person. No relatives, no connections. There is no one around to take care of me. How could someone live for so many years? I was stunned. I savor the words of old Master Gu in my heart. Then something bright caught my eye. Are you saying that? By the side of the god of cuisine, there must be others taking care of his life. Otherwise, he can't possibly maintain this state forever, right? Yes. Old Master Goose smiled and nodded, slowly and methodically. Now, we no longer need to enter this house. Just hide down the side. Observe where the vegetable god is returning to. Then we might figure it out. Who are the people hiding behind him? What secrets? Then he pointed towards the small Western-style building. Look at me and say, didn't you say before? Does the god of cuisine go out every day? So where is he going back to today? Do you know? I shook my head. Indicates not knowing. In fact, the culinary god has always been quite mysterious. I have only officially met him once. Understanding the god of cuisine, it's really too little. I shook my head. Old Master Gu is not in a hurry either. Right across the street, I found a secluded corner to sit down. Then he leisurely lit a cigarette. As the cigarette burned down to the end, he suddenly seemed to remember something. He reached his hand back into his pocket. He took out a small bottle and handed it over. Wait a moment. When the dish god leaves the house, just take this. Splash it all over him. I straightened up. Subconsciously, as a result, that little porcelain bottle brought it to my lips and sniffed. Immediately sensed a strong fishy odor. Confused, I looked at Grandpa Gu. Ask him what is inside the bottle. Machine snow, used for makeup normally. This thing has a lot of yang energy. It is especially effective against the undead. Old Master Gu gently explained. There is an old saying in the countryside. A chicken only lives for 3 years. A dog only lives for 6 years. Aged poultry already has its own spirituality. I give you, it has been more than 3 years since the snow at the agency. This thing is quite difficult to handle. You must take good care of it. Finally, footsteps could be heard in the little Western-style house. Old Master Gu has particularly sharp hearing. Across a road, but then heard something. Immediately, their expression changed. Get up and pull me. Hide behind a tree. Whispered, he has come out. Indeed, a few seconds later, I saw the god of vegetables, holding a blackened bag in hand. The footsteps staggered toward the other side of the street. His posture is very strange. The perspective while walking is slightly elevated. 2 legs look like a compass. The way it sways and shakes. It makes me particularly curious. Old Master Gu pushed me. Reminded, don't look anymore. This woman should be like the women of the old society. She bound her feet since childhood. I just accompanied old man Gu to leave the hiding place. Maintain a distance that is neither too far nor too close. Silently followed the chef ahead. It's quite strange. The culinary god, though bound by tradition, but the walking speed is not slow at all. A strong young man followed behind him. It also feels very strenuous. If it weren't for old man Gu's guidance from the side, several times I almost lost track. I couldn't help but be curious. Look at Grandpa Gu beside me. He has been gone for almost half an hour. Where exactly should we go? Old man Gu shook his head, not speaking, just looking at the back of the vegetable god. Became increasingly melancholic. We followed the god of vegetables from a distance. We walked for almost an hour. The path is becoming more and more off course. Unexpectedly left the outskirts of the city. Arrived outside a particularly remote, small village. The resources of this village are scarce. At the village entrance, there is only a winding dirt road. Several crooked wooden houses. It is also the Dong family. The Zai family has fallen into disarray. The village has long been abandoned. We walked along the yellow earth road for a long time. Not a single villager noticed. The more I walk, the more amazed I become. Couldn't help but stop. He asked old Master Gu, "Do you still want to go? In front is a stretch of wasteland. I really don't understand. Why does the god of cuisine want to be alone, running to such a remote place?" Old Uncle Gu let out a dark chuckle. "At the back of the origami village there is an old courtyard," said with a strange expression on his face. "Maybe the house. This is truly the home of the vegetable god." Uh, I immediately followed Grandpa Goose, looking at the old house at the end of the village. As expected, the goal of the Kaishen is that old mansion. He did not linger after entering the village, purposefully headed straight for that old house. He even pulled out a bunch of keys, skillfully unlocked the door. Once the dish god fully entered the old mansion, I felt relieved and bold to follow along with Uncle Gu, leaning against a low wall. They looked at each other simultaneously. Silence for a moment. I said, "That being said, the small Western-style house on Wutong Road. This is not where Kai-Shen usually resides." "But why is he?" "SHH, don't wait for me to finish." Old Master pressed his hand over my mouth, effortfully gestured towards the old house. I turned my head to look. The vegetable god actually came out again holding that black bag. Different times, he unexpectedly had a hoe slung over his shoulder. He continued to limp toward the back hillside. I am particularly puzzled until the god of cuisine walked away, just got rid of Elder Gu's hand. Whispering a question, the god of cuisine has left. Should we sneak into that old house first? Look for clues. Old Master Gu shook his head, gave me a slap on the forehead. So soon to become complacent. Did you forget what I said to you before? This old woman is not simple. The places she has been, it's not that easy to infiltrate. Finished speaking. Old Man Gu pointed his hand upwards. He urged me to go look at the roof of that old house. I responded with a knock. Suddenly, he was stunned again. On the beam of that old house, surprisingly, there was a particularly large old crow perched there. The crow's eyeball. It is blood red. Even though we are so far apart, I can feel its sinister gaze, especially sharp. My heart skipped a beat. He whispered, "That crow. What does it represent?" "That is not an ordinary crow, but it is a blood crow. In other words, I was raised on the flesh of the dead since I was little. That's why the eyeballs are so red." Old Master Gu took a deep breath. He said with a serious expression, "That thing must have been raised by the vegetable god. The purpose is to take advantage of my absence, monitor everything in his home." "What?" "The crow that grew up eating human flesh." I was instantly terrified, couldn't help but twitch my lips, snap back to reality. I found Uncle Goose staring at me with a twisted smile. The blood crow not only eats dead flesh. Moreover, they do not reject taking flesh from living people. If you go to that house now, I promise, he will fly down immediately to attack you. I swallowed. "Aren't we going to check the old house?" "What's the hurry?" "First, follow the chef. Figure out what he is doing." It was after midnight. "I'll find a way to get you in." Old Grandpa patted his backside and stood up. Yet, without looking back, I directly followed the direction in which the culinary god had left. We've been delayed on the road for so long. The sky was gradually darkening. We followed closely behind the vegetable god. They came to a rice field near the foot of the back mountain. Arrived here, the god of cuisine suddenly stopped in his tracks. Again, numb, carrying it out. He limped towards an old grave near the field ridge. That old grave must have been there for quite some time. Only a crooked grave mound remains. It seems to have been abandoned for a long time. Even the stones on the grave are loose and precarious. It looks like it could collapse at any moment. After the chef arrived at the grave, Bayan Muna stopped in his tracks. I glanced towards the direction of the grave, mumbling as if saying something, but due to the distance being too far, I didn't hear a single word clearly. Not long after, Kai-Shen raised the hoe, began digging at the grave. The sky grew darker. I don't know how. A hazy white mist began to rise from the direction of the back mountain. The desolate grave is cast in a deep shadow. I broke out in a layer of cold sweat. Gazing at the nightfall, the lonely figure of the culinary god, continuously swinging a hoe in front of a grave. This eerie scene made me particularly anxious. Unconsciously touched Uncle Goo's arm. Uncle, he is this. Stop talking nonsense. Continue watching. Old Master Goo must have thought of something, staring straight at the back of the god of cuisine. The gaze is particularly sharp. Lasted for over 10 minutes. The sky grew darker. The mist in the mountains seemed to grow thicker. The god of cuisine suddenly stopped digging the grave. He threw the hoe onto the ground. Next, Na Zhangmu's face revealed a particularly eerie smile. The left hand grabbed the black bag. Standing in front of the grave I dug for myself, crouched down, as if searching for something. After a while, his movements came to a stop. Then the ghost chuckled twice. Pull your arm back. They caught a snake that was over 1 meter long. What the heck? My heart is pounding like a drum. Almost scared me into jumping up. It turns out that the vegetable god came to the grave in the middle of the night to dig a hole. It turns out it was to catch a snake. In ancient times, someone held me down. Shake your head vigorously. Don't shout and make a fuss. It would be bad if he finds out. I turned back with difficulty. Why did the vegetable god catch these snakes? Is it to sell at the market? Change some living expenses. In our southwestern village, the snake catching industry is not new. Many farmers take advantage of the off-season to go into the mountains and catch snakes. Those people usually choose to go to the mountains during the day to catch, like the god of vegetables, and caught snakes on the grave. I have never seen it before. Old Man Goose smiled darkly. The expression became even more eerie. He caught no ordinary snake. It is a grave fan. I am very puzzled. Ask him what a grave fan is. Old Master Goo glanced towards the vegetable god. Seeing that he hadn't noticed this side, he lowered his voice and began to explain. The so-called grave fan. It is the evil snake that lives beneath the tomb. Typically, after a person dies, graves are often built in shaded areas. This shaded area is relatively damp, caught in a heavy rainstorm, or perhaps a landslide. It's easy to be soaked by a mountain flood. The old grave after being soaked. The environment inside will become particularly dark. Snakes thrive in this environment, especially that kind of mother snake about to download. Usually, one would carry the snake fetus in the clothing, running into these old graves to satisfy cravings. The little snake under the belly just live in the grave, grown by feeding on human flesh. Moreover, the aura from the graves is heavy. After a long time, these little snakes have also been tainted by the aura of the dead. After they grow up, it turned into a grave fan. The grave fan is an item of great darkness, highly toxic. If an ordinary person gets bitten, will be poisoned to death in a very short time. But for these living dead, however, it has a very special use. Yi laughed as he spoke. The expression was particularly eerie. He pointed to the grave. Let me go see for myself. I nodded, looking towards the vegetable god. The scene that followed. It made me want to throw up. The vegetable god placed several strips. A grave fan as thick as one's own arm. Stuff it into your pocket. Tightly tied the bag with a red string. Then turned his gaze to a slightly smaller grave fan. A strange, inexplicable smile hung on his face. Suddenly, he grabbed the grave fan. Open your mouth wide. Directly bite down on the grave. That grave fan is slightly smaller, but it is also over 1 meter long. Gray and white snake body. It is covered with many lime-like patterns. It's disgusting at first glance. Qi Kai-shen, however, showed no sign of fear. Instead, greedily chewing on the snake meat, still drinking the blood of the coffin fan in big gulps. The grave fan hurts unbearably, struggling desperately in his claw-like hands. twisted like a twisted donut. But gradually, but due to excessive blood loss, no longer have the strength to move. Then he was completely defeated by the god of vegetables. Very soon, the god of cuisine has also feasted on blood. Satisfaction glimmered in their eyes. He even squinted his eyes in enjoyment, as if reminiscing about something. The snake blood stained his mouth red. Under the backdrop of nightfall, don't even mention how creepy it is. I was sweating profusely. Keeps retracting its neck. Swallowed hard. What is this, god of cuisine? A living dead person. To maintain this state forever, one must regularly replenish their yin energy. The blood of the burning fan is a great dark entity. It is poison for ordinary people, but it's terrible that people like it. Old Master Goose smiled darkly, shook his head again. Turn your gaze towards me and say, you understand now. This woman claims to be Lai Zu's mother. How terrifying could it be? I won't speak any more. Just 2 strands of essence on the forehead. It keeps beating incessantly, expressing the terror within me. No wonder those times before, when I found the home of the culinary god. He is always absent. Emotions have come out to catch fire. After the god of cuisine drank the snake's blood, he didn't pay any attention to the remaining snake meat, but he stood up with a limp, hang that dead snake on a tree branch, then continued to carry that torn bag, walk towards the back mountain. I was puzzled by his intentions in doing this. A sound of flapping wings came from above. As I looked up, a dark shadow was flying over from the village, eagerly pouncing on that piece of snake meat, with sharp bird calls, continuously pecking at the flesh of the burning fan. It is the blood pressure that was raised on the beams of the old house. I was instantly dumbfounded. Ancient times come tap my shoulder, spoke in a lowered voice. This woman is not wasteful at all. Drinking snake blood by oneself, secretly fed snake meat to Zuya. But this is fine too, taking advantage of the high blood pressure to forage here. You can quickly run back to that old house. Go in and investigate the situation. I turned back with a sigh of frustration. Look towards old man Gu. What about you? Old grandpa pointed in the direction Kaishen was leaving. He said in a low voice, you and I will go our separate ways. I continued to follow this old woman, look at her entering the mountains. Is there any other purpose? Hurry up and take action. Remember to be quick. Once the blood pressure has consumed all the food, it will definitely fly back again. Guarding that old house. What if she finds out about you? It means Kaishen has discovered you. All right. Although I was very scared inside, but I still gritted my teeth and agreed. Kunkan said goodbye to old man Gu, turned and sprinted toward that old mansion. The sky grew darker. I returned to that old house, staring at the 2 dark wooden doors in front. My heart keeps sinking. There is no electricity in this yard. There isn't a hint of light. I can only take out my phone, with a bit of spectacle on the screen. Cautiously stepped into the small courtyard. After entering the courtyard, I first saw an inkstone. Behind the ink plate, a grape trellis was built. Under the grape trellis, there was also a bamboo lounge chair. Everything feels particularly familiar to me. Strange. The arrangement of this courtyard. Why is it so similar to my home? I was startled, looking around once again at the surroundings. It was quickly determined that one thing was certain. This dilapidated courtyard, the house where I lived with Uri for over 10 years, almost identical. Not just the arrangement of furniture in the courtyard, including that familiar grape arbor and the lounge chair placed under the grape trellis. It looks exactly like my family's yard. If you don't pay attention, I almost thought I was home. What the hell does this mean? Looking at everything familiar around me, I'm sweating again. A feeling of indescribable eeriness, always lingering in my heart, makes me feel uneasy. I can never understand why this yard, it's surprisingly just like my home, filled with shock and doubt. I cautiously pushed open the door to the main room. The old gate creaked immediately, slowly moving before my eyes. I raised my phone high. The faint light illuminated the surroundings of the room. Very quickly, I fell into an even greater shock. I can hardly believe my eyes. What did I actually see? In the middle of the main hall, there was an old, yellowed photo frame placed there. The frame looks quite old at first glance. The photos inside are also in black and white. But in the photo, a black and white photo of a family of 3 appeared. On the left side of the photo, a girl around 15 or 16 is standing, with an innocent look still on their face. Show a strange smile directly at the camera. It's Lai Zhu. To the right of the frame, there stood a person with a numb expression, a very dull middle-aged woman. It should be the young Kai Shen. This is not the main point. What truly sent chills down my spine was Lai Zhu and Kai Shen behind. There was also a serious and stern face. This face is too familiar. Even if I turned to ash, I would still recognize you. Isn't this just how Second Master looked when he was young? Ernie, Lai Zhu. There's also Kai Shen. The 3 of them. How could they appear in the same flower basket? My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Suddenly, a chill surged to the top of my head. The whole person was completely stunned. The 3 people in the picture, although their expressions vary, but they all radiate smiles of happiness. Without a doubt, this should be a family photo of 3. Such an old photo. There is no possibility of PS either. That means Yi and Lai Zhu. In fact, we are a family. A thought suddenly sprang to mind. It makes me feel breathless, as if a hidden hand had clenched around the throat. Suddenly fell into suffocation. This is impossible. When I helped Lai Zhu sign the grave before, I have clearly seen her father. That was a dignified figure, a middle-aged person in his 50s. It has nothing to do with Second Master at all. What the hell is going on? I collapsed. I felt my knees weaken, squatted directly on the ground. Suddenly, again under that group photo, I saw a familiar wooden box. Walk over mechanically, he numbly grabbed the box. I've seen this box before. Last time I infiltrated that small villa, it was placed on a table. Aunt Kai probably noticed. Someone is investigating their own secrets. So that's why I took this wood and moved into this old house. I still remember. In this box, there should be a straw figure made of paper. Behind the paper man, it writes my birth chart. I don't understand. What kind of connection do these details have? With a numb heart, gently opened the lock of the wooden box. I saw a little person outside. There is also a small figure made of straw. Surprisingly, there is a resemblance of about 60 to 70% with Lai Zhu on the legs of 2 little people. A red thread was tied to each of them. The red thread connects us, tied together, tied a strange butterfly knot. Mom, I was so scared that I threw away the box. Cold sweat beats wildly, unable to stand steadily even on my legs, backing away, reflecting on the night before last, when digging open second uncle's grave, the red wedding dress taken from beneath the coffin. That being said, those who want to marry me in a ghostly union, it has always been Lai Zhu. It turns out Lai Zhu is the ghost. Everyone was so scared that they stood up, never had the courage to look closely again. Turn around. He dashed outside. This turn of events, I discovered something even more bizarre. The door I opened before. At this moment, a cold wind suddenly swept through, accompanied by the sound of branches, slowly avoiding the cold. Janet, I suddenly realized something. Hastily rushed over. I want to seize the moment before the door is completely closed. Quickly escape this eerie house. It's too late. Just as I was running back, the big door slammed shut. Automatic closure. Immediately following, a cold wind began to blow outside the door. A multitude of leaves in the cold wind. Shake quickly. The courtyard gradually filled with A layer of white thick fog. Oh no, discovered by someone. I immediately realized something was wrong. When I first entered, the old house looks fine from the outside. There isn't a breath of wind. But now a strong wind has suddenly started blowing. It also gathered so much strange white mist. Remember, the Book of Morning mentions, only after the yin energy has reached a certain intensity, only then will it react with the air. A white mist-like phenomenon appeared. Concrete effect. This indicates there must be a ghost outside. Are you planning to trap me here? Damn it. Who are you really? When fear reaches its peak, I'm not as scared as I was before. Only infinite anger remains in my heart. Immediately facing the door, kicked hard a few times, to curse loudly, but that seemingly loose and sagging door. But it felt like I was dying from sweat. No matter how much effort I exert, no one could kick the door open directly. Lean on. In a moment of urgency, I let out a curse. Nothing else mattered anymore. I took out the small porcelain bottle that was given to me from ancient times. Uncap the bottle. Splash it against the door. The mechanism hole in the bottle. At this moment it took effect. But when the chicken blood was splashed on the door, the originally closed gate, a sizzling sound immediately erupted. A thick cloud of smoke rose up. There seemed to be a muffled bang coming from outside the door. It sounded as if something had fallen. Open the door for me. I can't think of anything else. Immediately gather your courage. Kicked the door hard once again. The big door was finally pushed open by me. Outside the door is a gloomy white mist. Everything seemed hazy. The visibility is less than 5 meters. The gaze pierced through the thick fog. I always feel in the darkness. It seems there are a pair of eyes. Looking resentfully at oneself, suddenly felt a jolt. Without saying a word, just run away. Run towards the dense fog outside. The night wind is deep, always circling behind me. I ran while screaming madly. The cold wind still lashes against my face. I don't know how long I've been running. I thought I had found myself. It seems I've run to the village entrance, just looking for a way to leave. But then I heard a soft call from behind me. Liao Fan, don't run away. Come back quickly. Our whole family is waiting for you. You're the last one needed now. The call of the colorful sounds. Can't tell if it's a man or a woman, but it scared me so much that my hair stood on end. I suddenly turned around, looked back at the swirling thick fog. The white mist was desperately swirling in the night wind. In the depths of the dense fog, there was a sound of footsteps tapping rhythmically, walking towards me. I can't see that ghost, but I know he is slowly approaching me step by step, trying to drag me back to that previous room. Come here. I'm not afraid of you. Not afraid of you. I'm already scared to madness. Sweat soaked the entire hair. Quickly pull out the demon-slaying blade that Grandpa Goo gave me, waving wildly in the air. I don't know if they fear the dagger in my hand. The dense fog did not come closer again, only in the depths of the dense fog. But the sound of sobbing came through, coldly wandering inside the village. Why are you so heartless? Come back quickly. I have been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you. Get out of my way. Get lost. I have completely broken down, shouting loudly with a big mouth, waving the dagger wildly, gesturing everywhere in the air. The dagger of old Master Goo. It indeed has the effect of driving away evil spirits. Under my chaotic hacking, the rolling thick fog can never enter my heart. I also took the opportunity to escape, screaming wildly, running hard towards the edge of the village. Running and running, I passed by a small grove. Hurry, the thick fog behind you. It seems they haven't caught up immediately. A bit of relief washed over me, just about to lean my body against the tree trunk. Take a breath. Suddenly, a withered human hand emerged from behind, suddenly resting on my shoulder. Liao Fan, how are you? I felt like I was struck by lightning, as if by a reflex. My wrist was tightly grabbed by someone. A sharp cry of a crane echoed in my ears. It made my eardrums throb with pain. The next second, a finger pointed at my forehead, pressed hard. I immediately felt a tingling sensation all over my body. Thus slipped from his hand. When the waif fell to the ground, "Es!" I gasped in shock, fell down with a thud. When I raised my head again, but I saw old man Gu had already come back. Jeng was staring at me with a serious expression. "What's wrong with you, kid?" Not even a glance. Just slash wildly. Fortunately, I reacted quickly. Otherwise, I would have been sent away by you. Old man Gu. I shivered all over. Then suddenly thought of something. The expression changed drastically. Leaped up impatiently. Holding his hand, plans to continue running out of the village. "There's a ghost chasing me. Don't look back. Let's hurry and run. There's no ghost chasing you, even if there really is. I am here." He also didn't dare to show up. Old man Gu coldly shook me off. That makes me so angry. It's funny again. Shaking his head, he said, "Hurry up and tell me. What exactly happened to you just now? Didn't I ask you to check the situation at that old house? How did I end up in such a mess?" I wore a miserable expression, biting her teeth in fear. "That house? They are ghosts." Uncle Gu was not surprised. Frowning, he looked at the Jenksi blade on the ground, then picked him up, squinted at the tip of the blade. He let out a strange laugh twice. "What is there to fear about ghosts? Didn't I teach you how to deal with him? With the evil slaying blade and the mechanism acupoint. Still being chased around in a frenzy. Look at your little achievements." Finished speaking. Old Master Gu handed the evil slaying blade back to me, patted my back. "Let's go. It is already late. It's not safe to walk at night. There is a land temple outside the village entrance. We can go in and take a break for now. That's it." Old Master Gu directly pushed me with his hand, stepped out of that grove. The entire process, I have always been fierce, walking while nervously surveying the surroundings until leaving that village. Make sure the ghost behind hasn't followed. Suddenly took a breath, feeling lightheaded. Almost fell to the ground. "Why aren't you leaving again? Look at your little achievement." Old Master Gu did not pay attention to my weakness. Gently patted my bottom. Without further ado, just pull me directly. Approaching a hillside temple by the roadside, entered the earth temple. Old man Gu sighed. While gathering firewood, a bonfire was lit. Saw the flames. I finally feel a hint of warmth in my body, reflecting on what just happened. My heart is still in a state of turmoil. Trembling with fear, eyes tightly shut. Old Master Gu pushed me. "What exactly did you encounter? Go ahead and speak." Under his urging, I had to open my eyes again, swallowed hard. Then the events after the breakup. Speak it out exactly as it is. Old Master Gu listened thoughtfully, then nodded slightly. "I see. It seems that way. The ghost that has been haunting you. It must be Lai Zhu. However, how is that possible, despite the facts being laid out before us? But I still can't understand." Pounding his forehead hard, he covered his face in pain. "That heavenly official of the... I found it in front of Lai Zhu before I awakened him with sheep's blood. Lai Zhu already exists. He stayed with me to finish high school together. If trapped in the Hall of Dharma treasure with a ghost, it's Lai Zhu herself. You accompanied me while studying before. We have shared the same classroom for 3 long years. Who is it again?" Old Grandpa took a breath and said, "Have you ever thought about it? In this world, perhaps there are 2 Lai Zhus. The person who studies with you and trapped under the coffin, not the same." "What do you mean?" "Maybe. Who knows?" Old Master Gu revealed that mysterious smile again, patted my shoulder and said, "There's one more thing. You just said, in that group photo. Saw the young Yi, suspecting him and Lai Zhu. Perhaps it is a family, right? I nodded in confusion. It is said that old Master Gu smiled again and said, "This is strange. Your second uncle's surname is Jiang. Lai Zhu's surname is Lai. If we are truly family, why do the surnames differ?" This is what was said. A light in my heart. Suddenly something came to mind. Who said, "Do you mean Lai Zhu and second master? There may not be any relationship. That photo, it was forged by someone, specifically misleading me. I never said that." Old Master Gu shook his head. He chuckled and said, "The photo is so old. It was probably filmed by someone from the last century. That era, there isn't that much photo editing technology yet. So the photo is unlikely to be fake. So what exactly do you want to say?" I was left completely confused by him, knocked on my head hard. Old Master Gu sighed. He looked deeply at me and said, "Do you know Lai Zhu? This year, I'm just in my early 20s. But the girl in that photo, if I live to today, at the very least, they should be in their 30s. I suddenly realized. He smoothly continued the conversation. "So, Lai Zhu I know. Lai Zhu trapped in the Fazang Heavenly Gate. It can't possibly be the same person." Uncle Gu's words. It explained many of my doubts. But it opened up a new mystery. Yi and Lai Zhu. What connection truly exists? The night is already very deep. I keep watch over the pile of bonfire in front of me. I can't fall asleep no matter what, reflecting on the experiences I've had these days. It felt like a thorn had pricked my heart. Until dawn is approaching, I finally managed to lean against the wall and doze off for a bit. When I woke up, old grandfather is not by my side. Probably went off to take a pee. I didn't pay much attention. Yawned and stood up. I saw the rain beginning to fall outside. Then prepared to go outside. Arrived at the temple gate. I saw it again. The deity of the land enshrined in the altar. A stir in the heart. He took a cigarette out of the cigarette box. "Come to the land deity." Lit a stick of incense, muttering a phrase under their breath. "Sorry to bother you. I stayed overnight at the Earth God temple last night. Light an incense stick for him. At least it wasn't a complete disturbance to the tranquility of the Earth God." Just as I lit my cigarette, as I was about to get up, Yu Guang caught a glimpse beneath the statue of the land god. A hole has unexpectedly appeared. I am puzzled. Look at the broken mouth beneath the statue. Clearly just made. Could it be that old Master Gu took advantage of me while I was asleep? Left on the statue. With suspicion, I leaned in a little closer. Reach your hand into the hole beneath the statue of the Earth God. Reach out and grab a piece of paper. That's how I managed to get it out. Unfold the note, written in a crooked and wobbly handwriting. Writing a sentence. "Don't trust the people around you. He wants to harm you." I was startled, subconsciously gripping the note tightly. Sweat beads on the face covered in acne. All of it dripped down onto the neck. Who left the note? I looked up. Look ahead. This land god statue is less than half a person's height. Spinning rapidly in my mind. First, this note couldn't have been left by old Master Gu. He was right beside me last night. You can tell me anything directly. There's no need to do something so pointless. But the chisel marks beneath the statue are ruthless. The note was clearly just placed inside. Could it be? Someone took the opportunity while Uncle Gu was outside to relieve himself. Sneak in here quietly. The purpose is to leave this note. Let me prepare myself, if that's really the case. So, the person next to me on this note, most of the time, it must be old Master Gu. Who left the note? I feel very restless inside. He pondered for a long time, still waiting to come up with a result, but heard footsteps coming from the broken temple door. When I turned around, I saw Grandpa Gu tying his belt. Cursing and grumbling, he walked into the dilapidated temple. This broken place. There's not even a public restroom. There are many mosquitoes in the mountains. The skill of firing the cannon. Give me a dozen or so bags. You brat are awake. How can one stare blankly at the statue of the earth god? Uh, it's nothing. I had a clever idea. Hurry and fold the note properly, swiftly hidden in the pocket. Then shook his head. Said they planned to pay respects to the local Tootie Gong. Old Master Goose smiled. With a face full of disdain, he curled his lips. What is there to worship about this earth god? The earth god of the small town. It's just a mountain spirit, bewitched by the earthly incense. Speaking of ghost-catching skills, can you really not compare to me? That is, I wiped my sweat, nodding along casually. Don't turn away. But in my heart I was thinking, you old rascal, just pretend. Who is the ghost after all? Who is a person? It's still uncertain. All along, I never doubted Uncle Goo's identity. I always feel that although he is mysterious, but to me they are very honest, no matter what the problem is. You always analyze things perfectly for me. With the appearance of this note, I have trust in him, but gradually began to waver. Fortunately, Grandpa Goo did not discover that note. The day has dawned. He stretched and walked towards me. Then come back with me. I didn't refuse. Silently, he slipped the note into the grave, silently following behind him. We walked along that dirt road for a long time. This is just returning to the outskirts of the city. It's time to wait for the bus. I immediately found an excuse. Said to old Master Goo, Uncle, I just remembered I have a personal matter to attend to. Anyway, it's already bright out. That thing shouldn't come to threaten me. Let's break up here for now. Old Master Goo didn't say anything. Nods slightly. Okay. You better watch yourself. What is the problem? You can reach out to me for help anytime. Sigh. I readily agreed with my mouth. Then, with a quick run, directly left that bus stop, out of old Master Goo's sight. I found a place with few people, unfolded the note once again. Upon careful consideration, the handwriting on the note is very messy. It's obvious that this was written in a hurry, unable to distinguish whose handwriting it is. Whose handwriting is it?